it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Don't get the Safe app. It's free, but it's no bargain. Brandon nodded along with the employee at the wireless provider store. He was in the process of changing providers and wanted to do it in person rather than online. It had paid off. This chick was pretty hot and smart, at least regarding tech. His girlfriend, Jennifer, wouldn't care that he looked. She did all the time, and they happily discussed the hot people they saw each day. He wasn't really paying much attention as she went over features and options for his new device. She'd already completed the download of everything from his old one. It was now boxed and would be soon on the way to be refurbished and upgraded. He caught up as Denise highlighted a particular feature that was new to all devices. One of the great free offers we have is the Safe app. Safe actions for everyone. We follow your activities and locations and make recommendations as to the safest course, the best ways to proceed so that you can avoid danger. We take responsibility for your safety and that of all our customers. She held the device so that he could not look at it without viewing her impressive bust. He would have mindlessly agreed to anything she'd said at that moment. He was also ready to go and meet Jennifer for lunch at a nearby sandwich shop. They rushed through the final process to get this latest bill charged to his credit card. Jennifer was in a decent enough mood, though she had nothing good to say about her co-workers at the medical clinic. She'd wanted to be a doctor, and then a nurse, and had settled for medical office assistant. She liked to complain that she knew more than anyone else at the office, and should be the manager. She was ready to quit and find another employer that might appreciate her talents. So far no one was interested since she'd worked at 4 different facilities in the last 2 years. Brandon had possessed ambitions of becoming a games designer. When his mother remarried, the new couple decided that they needed room for his younger stepkids, so he'd taken a job at a big box electronics and tech store and moved in with Jennifer. He liked it well enough, especially giving people advice on new products, and they'd lived together for most of the past year, the longest relationship either of them had ever endured. So, do you like it? Jennifer inquired. Like what? Oh, the device. His mind had wandered as she'd gone on about her immediate supervisor being an old Gen Xer. Oh, yeah, I guess. It's like better than my last one. Got all kinds of free apps from the provider. Jennifer pretended interest as he listed the new apps, especially the games, so she could pretend interest in something he liked, and the ones that allowed viewing of reality programming, something she liked. They finished lunch, another bill added to his credit card balance, and parted just outside. Okay, I've got to go to work. See you tonight? Brandon offered. Jennifer agreed and was secretly happy. She'd have time to catch up on her shows in the hours he was still at work. About halfway through his shift, the device booped softly. Brandon was in between customers, so he checked the alert. There was some notice from one of the new apps. Well, he ignored it and went back to sampling the latest fantasy war game. The store encouraged sales employees to sample the games when they weren't busy, so that they could highlight features for customers and to keep them occupied and out of mischief. Management expressed that if customers saw personnel enthusiastically playing a game, well, they'd want to play it as well. After a few minutes, the device booped, definitely louder than it had the first time. Brandon didn't check it this time. He'd reached a critical point in the game and was too excited to be distracted. 30 seconds later, the device whooped and buzzed, a heavy vibration that caused Brandon to lose concentration on what he was doing and pause the game. He was annoyed and looked at the text bubble on the screen. We have been unable to confirm your status. Are you safe? Yes. No. Do you need help? Yes. No. Brandon gaped and stared in confusion. Why would they send me that? He saw that it was from the Safe app. Must be testing. Some of the new apps would likely send him notices for the next few days. He clicked the yes and then the no buttons, and the bubble faded from the screen. He'd forgotten about the app by the time his shift ended, and the store closed. He walked out to his little sedan through the darkened parking lot. A row of lights had gone out earlier in the week, and he'd forgotten and parked in that area. As he approached his car, he saw that a figure stood near to the much nicer vehicle that belonged to his manager, Barbara. The figure wore dark clothes and a hoodie and lurked back in the shadows. Brandon's device began to vibrate intensely. He continued to approach his car. It was probably an employee from one of the other stores in the strip mall, out taking a break. A little warm for a hoodie, he absently thought. He knew that Barbara was closing the store tonight, and this was his only shift that allowed him to leave when the last customers did. Otherwise he'd still be inside helping her. The figure appeared to watch him intently as the device continued to buzz insanely in its holder. Brandon arrived at his car and stood outside the driver door as he started to fish for the key fob. The figure in the shadows shifted to better view what he was doing, though he didn't notice. What other people did was not his concern. It wasn't his place to judge. He used the fob to start the engine, and as he opened the door, a voice startled him. "Put that fob in the front seat and get out of here." Brandon was confused. Why would anyone demand that he leave his fob in the car and walk away from it? That was a stupid thing to say, and the tone of the speaker annoyed him. He looked up as the figure approached. It was tall and broad-shouldered, and it was holding a pistol. He couldn't clearly see the face, but he could feel the menace implied in the demeanor. He didn't know what to say or do. He simply stared, mouth agape. "Don't just stand there drooling, dumbass. Get out of here." The man didn't exactly shout, but he was clearly agitated. His voice was clear through the black face mark that hid his features. But, sir, this is my car," Brandon stuttered as his device continued to vibrate almost uncomfortably against his side. He reached down to hit the button on the side of it to stop the sound. The alleged carjacker reached out with his free hand and yanked the device from Brandon's holder. "Hey, that's new!" He dropped the device in surprise. It had delivered a mild shock to his fingers. "Look, stupid, I'm taking your ride." "Well, I wanted that fly ride." He chucked his chin toward Barbara's SUV. "But I'll take yours since you want to look at me so hard." Brandon's device lay on the ground, no longer vibrating. He wondered briefly whether it was broken. He'd purchased a protective cover for it, but still, sirens now sounded in the near distance. He didn't notice it, but the suspect did. That one knew the difference between an ambulance and a police siren, and he saw the flashing lights, still a few blocks away but approaching fast. He shoved Brandon aside, slid into the driver's seat, and took off from the parking lot. He'd made it part way down the block when the police vehicle turned into the entrance. Out on the roadway, Brandon's car died and rolled to a stop. The car had gone too far from the fob, which still dangled in Brandon's relaxed grip. Well, the officer must have noticed that the little sedan had stopped and that all of its hazard lights now flashed. The unwelcome occupant leapt from the driver's side door and fled on foot. The officer turned his vehicle and drove back into the lot and toward Brandon. They soon completed a witness statement, and the officer spoke with Barbara, who let the officer look at the security footage. Brandon texted Jennifer to let her know what had happened, but she was too absorbed with the latest reality show to notice his reality. He'd had to clear several notification bubbles that screamed, "Police have been notified. Police are on the way. We will keep you safe." When he was finally freed from the scene of the incident, no crime since there was no suspect in custody, Brandon finally made it home. As he pulled into his assigned space at the apartment complex, the device booped. He'd been pretty happy with the app for silently alerting the police, but he hadn't noticed the shock anti-theft feature. He thought that the robber had just dropped the device. He checked the screen. "Are you safe? Yes. No." He clicked yes and went inside to see Jennifer. They each had a room and acted as much like roommates as a couple. "Hey, Jenny, you get my text?" She raised up from where she laid sprawled on the couch, snacks and drinks littered around her viewing space. "No, babe. What's up?" He told her and was rewarded with sympathy and the chance to share her bed for most of an hour. Afterwards, he went to his own room, very satisfied. No sooner had he stepped out of the shower than the device booped. He dried himself enough that he wouldn't get the thing wet when he touched it. By then it had booped and buzzed. Even as he thumbed open the screen, a voice emitted from the speaker. "You have continued to engage in moderate risk behavior. Are you well? Do you need assistance?" Well, it was a pleasant enough, though annoying voice. "What the fuck, dude? I'm like showering. Why do you keep bothering me?" The voice spoke again. "You ate a meal with poor nutritional qualities, including meat. You played a violent game that might harm your psyche or lure you into dangerous acts. You ignored rational safety protocols when entering an unsafe area after dark. You've engaged in unsafe sexual acts. Your shower has worn slip resistance and the water was too hot to ensure a balance of moisture content in your skin. Any of these could have caused great physical, mental, or emotional harm. We are here to ensure that you remain safe and healthy." Brandon stood gaping. His hair draped wetly about his head and the towel slung over one shoulder. A fat drop of water from his hair splashed onto the screen. He quickly wiped it off and set it aside, completing the drying process. When he looked again, the screen had gone dark. The thing had clearly opened a camera feature on him. Oh, great, now everybody will see me naked. The device booped. He looked at it but did not pick it up again. He no longer had to. He'd forgotten that that thing was AI tech and had learned his habits with experience. "Your images will be released only under the terms to which you agreed, for the sole use of the app provider. We will ensure that you remain safe." Jeez, is there a way to turn off the app or snooze it? "Safety is a concern at all times. We will continually monitor your safety." Yeah, but could you not, boot me every 5 seconds? "We have not done that, and unless you find a way to remain in unsafe conditions in rapid succession, we will not. Part of what we do is to remind you of unsafe conditions and acts, so that you will learn to care for yourself more effectively by complying with safety guidelines." Brandon shrugged and held down the power button on the device. "Yeah, well, you can't do anything without juice." He put the thing on his nightstand and went to bed. He awakened to mad booping and buzzing at 3:33 a.m. He reached over to the device, its screen brightly lit and flashing. "What? How?" he hoarsely inquired. He picked up the device, and it finally ceased its boisterous alarms. "We detected sounds of fear from you. Perhaps you had a nightmare or suffered some sort of neurological malfunction. Are you safe? Do you need help?" Brandon had awakened more fully. He was still groggy and confused. Seriously? I was really sleeping. Why would you wake me up like that?" "We were concerned for your psychological well-being. Nightmares reflect anxieties. If you need to discuss them, we can do so, or we can summon the assistance of mental health authorities if you prefer." How did you turn on by yourself?" "We are in operation at all times. Has your memory suffered from damage? Are you safe? Do you need help?" "No. I'm angry and I want to sleep. Just leave me alone. It's normal to have dreams." Brandon set the device back on the nightstand. "Sleep well and be safe. We will be monitoring." The next morning he awakened to gentle boops. The moment his eyes opened, the voice intruded on his consciousness. "It is the optimal time for you to awaken and take nourishment. You will then have time to exercise before you attend to other activities." Brandon moaned. "Really? I don't need some app to tell me what to do. I can, take care of myself." "It is our role to ensure your long-term health, which will ensure your general safety." Brandon had had enough. He tossed the device onto the floor near the door to his bedroom and set about his morning ablutions. He just pulled on his pants and was poking his head through the neck of his t-shirt when the doorbell rang. Jennifer would have already left for work, so he walked into the living room even as the rings turned to authoritative knocks. He peered through the safety lens in the door and saw a dark, looming figure. "Who is it?" he called through the door. He had no idea who it could be. He wasn't expecting company, and his friends knew better than to wake him before 10 a.m. There were no maintenance issues, and he'd paid the rent last week. Well, it was his turn. Jennifer would get it next month. Well, maybe Jennifer had ordered something. A voice answered through his racing thoughts. A representative of the Safe app. Are you safe? Are you well? It was the same androgynous voice that had emitted from the device's speakers. So, it's a real person after all, he thought, as he opened the door to give the possessor of said voice a piece of his mind. The person before him stood politely, hands clasped in front, below the waist. The figure wore dark, loose-fitting garments over a white shirt and black tie. The hair was medium length, the expression was inscrutable. He couldn't tell the sex of the person. Well, he didn't really care. Maybe non-binary. The person looked him over from head to toe and back. He felt like he was being undressed and examined in a clinic. You appear to be safe. Do you need help? Brandon stared, jaw drooping. I don't know you. You shouldn't come to people's houses like this. Why are you here? The person stared for a moment, perhaps nonplussed, perhaps simply emulating the demeanor he, she, or it thought was appropriate. You threw down your device in unreasonable anger. We felt it was appropriate to provide a personal checkout for your safety and emotional well-being. Brandon processed the response and decided that maybe they were just overly enthusiastic. Yeah, well, I don't need a babysitter, and I don't appreciate that the device keeps giving me alerts. Look, thanks for coming to check on me, but I don't need you to do that anymore. I was about to delete the app anyway. The person gave him a bland smile. We understand that there's an adjustment period, but I must remind you of our agreement, the one you signed only yesterday. There is no way to uninstall the Safe Actions for Everyone app. Are you safe? Do you need any help? It asked, relentlessly. Brandon rolled his eyes. No! And closed the door. He resumed his activities, and since it was on his way, he picked up his device and put it on the all-purpose kitchen table. He presently joined it, a bowl of cereal in hand. Well, he almost dropped the bowl, when the device booped and buzzed like an oversized, angry insect. We recommend that you eat smaller portions and use non-dairy milk. These measures will keep you healthy and safe. Do you need help finding the products? Would you like us to purchase them for you and have them delivered? Well, that did it. Brandon wolfed down his breakfast to the urgings of the voice to slow down his intake and to chew properly before swallowing. It warned of creating a choking hazard or indigestion. The passionless tones made the two conditions seem comparable in outcome, and therefore inconsequential. He looked down at the device. You are so going back to the store. The device then volunteered the safest route for him to follow. He chose the shortest way, and the voice admonished him. This route is not optimal for your safety. Do you need help? He ignored it and continued the way he wanted to go. There is a vehicle behind you that is following at an unsafe distance. Use caution to be safe. He activated the windshield wiper spray and sent droplets over the roof of his vehicle to land on the windscreen of the tailgater, to warn the driver behind him to back off his bumper. That act was unsafe. The other driver may overreact and cause you harm by an aggressive driving response or by exiting his vehicle to physically assault you. Brandon turned on the car radio to drown out the incessant voice, yet it went on ceaselessly. Up ahead, a vehicle to your right has stopped in an unsafe proximity to the roadway. The driver may proceed before it's safe to do so. Use caution. A pedestrian is crossing ahead, outside the lines of the crosswalk. Use caution. You are approaching a school zone that is currently inactive. It is safe for you to proceed. The voice chattered until he finally stopped at the store. Your selection of parking space is questionable. It is close to the building, but you will get no exercise from the walk. You are also parked too closely to the designated space line. Another driver could park his vehicle close and leave insufficient space for you to safely exit and enter your vehicle. Do you need help? Brandon huffed in frustration and stalked into the store. Denise was with another customer, but her supervisor stepped forward to assist him. "How may I help you?" It was the same person who'd come to his apartment earlier, now dressed in a golf shirt with the provider logo on one side and the same dark pants. The logo was deep blue and sported a red eye with white waves emanating from the bottom, symbolic of broadcasting signals. Brandon stared hard at this person's eyes. "You didn't say that you worked here when you came by this morning," he accused. The person stared back, one eyebrow raised questioningly, but otherwise with no change of the bland smile. "I've been here since 9 a.m. I've gone nowhere else. Perhaps you encountered an associate from our support services." Brandon stepped back and looked over the person before him. Well, the similarities were uncanny, but perhaps it was a different associate. Had the figure developed some even while they spoke? This was definitely more of a she on closer inspection. The hair was indeed a slightly lighter color than the other associate, and bushy the way he liked it. The logo on the shirt had gone from presenting vertically to slightly horizontally. Female according to those two, he decided. I'm having trouble with my device. I just got it yesterday from Denise." The now attractive manager, whose features had somehow acquired makeup to enhance her lips, cheeks, and eyes, introduced herself as Debbie. How did I miss that? He wondered as he allowed her to lead him to a service counter. "Now, what is the nature of your problem, and do you need help?" He looked down at the device. It works and stuff, but there's an app on it that won't leave me alone. The Safe app. Started off just booping and buzzing and sending text. Now it talks constantly, and someone came to my door this morning to check on me." Debbie nodded. "Yes, these are all features to which you agreed before you downloaded the Safe Actions for Everyone app. We follow your activities and locations and make recommendations as to the safest course, the best ways to proceed so that you can avoid danger. We take responsibility for your safety and that of all our customers." God, it was the same rehearsed speech Denise had delivered yesterday, he realized. "So, how can I, get out of it? The person at my door said he couldn't delete the app. Maybe I could get a new device?" She nodded again, mindlessly with the same sterile smile gracing her features. "That is correct. The contract for the Safe app is separate and binding. You cannot stop it even with a new device." Brandon had grown increasingly frustrated. "But I don't want the app. What if I cancel my contract and go to another provider?" Debbie's vacuous smile continued, and she repeated the bobbing nod. "We certainly understand that this is your decision. However, you will then have to pay for the device in full rather than on monthly charges, and the Safe app will continue to ensure your safety and well-being no matter what device or service you use." The contract was something separate. Services provided by the app providers. All service providers are now required to offer the services via the app, and once they are accepted and the app is installed, they are permanent. Brandon realized that he was trapped. He couldn't afford to pay off the device. Going to another provider wouldn't help, or so she said. Well, he could at least ask another company. He thanked her and left the store. As soon as he was outside, the device started up again. "The UV index is high today. Consider applying some sunscreen. You should purchase and wear anti-UV sunglasses to protect your eyes. Your blood pressure is elevated. Do you need help?" He didn't answer. He just continued walking. The competing provider store stood just at the other end of the strip of retail establishments. He hoped the thing would shut up as it had when he'd entered the first provider's storefront. "Be careful when you open the door. Another customer is inside and about to exit. The door is heavy and sealed by the climate control inside the structure. When you open the door, be sure to use your body weight instead of trying to use your muscles alone to avoid strain. You have not answered the earlier inquiry. Are you safe? Do you need help?" Brandon spoke aloud and sharply. "Yes, He paused. His outburst had caught the attention of several customers and staff as he entered the storefront. He looked around, in embarrassment, and apologetically whispered, "Sorry, yes, App. I'm fine. An employee approached him. The young male appeared to be built on the same chassis as the androgyne that appeared on his doorstep, and the miraculously morphing Debbie. "Good afternoon. My name is Derek. How may I help you? Have you seen our excellent deals?" Brandon wasn't quite sure what to say. If he told the employee that he wasn't a purchasing customer, they might not be willing to answer his inquiries. He determined to simply ask about the app. It was like looking into an app I heard about. I think it's called something like Safe App. Derek perfectly mimicked Debbie's smile and nod. The Safe Actions for Everyone app. We follow your activities and locations and make recommendations as to the safest course, the best ways to proceed so that you can avoid danger. We take responsibility for your safety and that of all our customers. He recited the same pitch as had Denise and Debbie. Derek stood. The empty smile that offered friendly customer service still pasted on his features. Brandon knew it well as a fellow retailer. "So, if I change service to your company, can I, opt out or something?" he asked with fading hopes. Derek nodded yet again. The Safe App will continue to ensure your safety and well-being no matter what device or provider you use. The contract for the app is something separate. All providers are now required to offer the services, and once they are accepted, they are permanent. Again, the same speech, Brandon realized. He noted the logo on Derek's shirt. It was the same pattern as the one on Debbie's, except that the background was white, the eye was blue, and the waves, which emanated to Derek's right, were red. He didn't say anything else. He simply flared back to his car. Along the way, the device spouted advice to him. "You should slow your pace. Your blood pressure and heart rate are elevated due to stress rather than purposeful exertion. You might also trip or lose footing. You'll need to replace these shoes soon. Your current ones are worn and may allow for a slip. They are also worn on the inside and no longer provide adequate arch support." He raised the device into the air and flung it as forcefully as his flaccid muscles allowed at the ground. The protective case sent it bouncing out into the lane behind his car. He didn't chase it, but rather leaped into his vehicle, started the engine, and backed out, aiming to run over the device. Instead, the little vehicle straddled the thing that shouted as loudly as the speaker would allow that he was putting himself in terrible danger and that it would notify the police and EMS. He didn't hear the words over the roar and rattle of the little engine that barely could. He didn't hear the words over the roar and rattle of the little engine that barely could. Instead, he focused on driving forward, once more trying to get a tire up onto the device. He then tried again to back over it. He caught the corner of it, and then something struck his rear bumper, or rather he'd struck something with it. It had a heavy, giving feel. He stopped, put the car in neutral, and stepped out to survey what he already knew. His heart plunged to his knees, and the rest of him soon followed. A form lay stretched out on the pavement behind his car. A small shopping basket from the Dollar Saver store in the strip mall rolled toward the other side of the lane on its own. The hands that had pushed and controlled it now released and set to other purposes. The figure stirred and attempted to rise. Brandon stood and ran to see if he could help. It was an elderly woman. The impact had knocked her backward, and her right knee now bent at an awkward angle. She screamed as she raised her blood-soaked head in agony. Brandon's device, the voice now emanating from under his car, informed him, "The authorities are on the way. You will be safe. Do you need any other help?" Then, from the spilled contents of the woman's purse, came the same voice. "You are severely injured. We have alerted authorities, and they are on the way to help. Do not try to move or stand. Be as still as you are able. EMS will arrive shortly and transport you to the nearest appropriate emergency room." And the woman said, feebly, "Understood. I will comply." She indeed relaxed, despite the intense pain that clearly plagued her, and lay so still that Brandon feared she'd succumb to her injuries, those that he had caused. He knelt beside her. I'm so sorry. How can I help you?" The woman gritted through her pain and whispered, "Do as the app tells you. It's there to keep us all safe. You must comply or you'll suffer." Fortunately, the ambulance arrived soon, and Brandon's device kept a running stream of advice on how to avoid being hit and how to signal the ambulance, and to avoid having the gathering crowd harm the woman. It reminded him to place your vehicle in park and turn off the engine. It's highly unsafe to leave it running and in neutral. The EMS crew worked quickly to stabilize their patient and load her onto the waiting ambulance. Over her obviously severe pain, she asked one of the crew to bring along her device, and as a second thought, her purse. They obliged, and the ambulance was presently on its way. In the meantime, a pair of police units had arrived, and Brandon was subjected to some strict questioning and given a field sobriety test. His device app remained silent during the process. Ultimately, they arrested him for reckless driving and towed his car. They put his personal property, including the device, into a bag that one of the officers took along with them to the jail. They ignored Brandon's pleas to let him call Jennifer, and they told him that he could make calls once he'd arrived at jail. He had to retake the field sobriety test and give both breath and blood samples during the booking process. By the time it was all done, he asked again about making a phone call. The booking staff directed him to the phone on the wall. A large, unpleasant-looking man with tattoos on his face and neck was currently using the phone, so he'd have to wait. When it was finally his turn, he realized that he didn't know her number. It was in his device, which was now sealed in his personal property bag and stowed in a drawer, where stood a sullen-looking corporal. Sir, can I, look at my device to get a number?" he asked plaintively. The corporal looked down his substantial nose. "Oh, bag is sealed. You can't get it until we release you. We told you that when we signed the receipt for it." Brandon hung his head. He thought as fiercely as he was able and asked the corporal if he could provide a number to the store where he worked. His only chance was Barbara. Well, he needed to let her know that he wouldn't be at work anyway. The corporal rolled his eyes and looked at his own device. After a few minutes of tapping, he supplied the number and then warned, "Get someone to bail you out soon, or we'll have to put you in with the rest of the criminals." And Barbara was awesome as always, and even agreed to look up his emergency contact information and call Jennifer and his parents. The frightening tattooed man had stretched out on the concrete block that formed the bench and bed in the cell. Well, Brandon paced around for a while, stood with his arms crossed, and then sank abjectly to the floor with his back against the wall. The scary man regarded him for a moment, and then snorted, "You can come sit here with me on my lap. I ain't seen a virgin on the inside for a while." It took Brandon a moment to comprehend what the man had suggested. He felt his face heat and hung his head in abject misery and fear. Before anyone could show up for him, a bail bond employee arrived and posted his bond. He hadn't called for the guy. He'd just shown up with paperwork ready to sign. Well, Brandon suspected that either Jennifer or his mother had contacted them. In any case, he was glad to be set free. As he left the holding cell, the scary man called to him. "Oh, don't worry, sweet lips. You'll be back, and I'll be waiting." His cackling laughter was the last thing Brandon heard as he was ushered out to see the magistrate and regain his freedom. He looked at the clear plastic bag that contained everything he'd had on his person at the time of his arrest. And, of course, the device. The battery had run down, so he felt comforted that he wouldn't have to hear the remonstrations of some AI program designed by freaks who wanted to harass the app users. The bail bondsman gave him a ride home. His car was impounded as evidence. It wasn't that far, and there was no one else to do it. He couldn't afford a rideshare, much less a taxi. He may have been able to take a bus part of the way, but he was safe from all that. As he thanked the man for taking him home, the fellow handed him a pair of business cards. "One's mine. Well, we'll have more business if you don't show to court. If you do, the other card may help. Good lawyer, looking for some easy pro bono work to build her reputation. Well, she's also my cousin, so act right around her." Brandon took the cards and thanked the man. He gave him a little money, enough to get lunch, and then mournfully walked upstairs to his home. It was early in the morning, and Jennifer was still getting ready for work when he arrived. And she was in a mood. "So where have you been at? I stayed up worried about you. You didn't call or anything." He looked at her wearily. "Barbara didn't call you?" She glared at him a moment. "Oh, is that what you were out doing? Of course she didn't call. Nobody did. I need to go in just a minute, but I want some answers." He looked at the floor in front of his feet. I ran into a lady in my car. They arrested me. I was in jail." Well, the odor from his clothes finally impinged on her angry mind. "Ugh, you stink like jail. 30 feet urine, sweat, and stale food. I'll never forget that, even for just the few hours I stayed for drunk and disorderly." Well, Brandon hadn't realized she'd ever been to jail. "I didn't get any sleep and I need a shower bad," was his erudite response. "Wait a minute. Who bailed you out if Barbara didn't get me?" she asked suspiciously. He shrugged. "The bail guy just, showed up. I thought maybe you or my mom called him, but I forgot to ask him. I just wanted to get out of that place. They put me in a prison with some rapist guy. Creepy." Well, she at least gave in a little as she breezed out the door. "You definitely get that shower before you climb into a clean bed. I'll see you after work. I can't believe that you got arrested. You're such a goody-goody dog." He decided to leave the device unplugged. It was his day off, so he could sleep in, and he needed the rest. He showered and brushed his teeth, then started to crawl in the bed for some rest before he had to face the day. Before his head hit the pillow, the voice emerged from the device. "It would be helpful if you would charge your device. It's unnecessary for the app to work, but the functions and wait time may be negatively impacted." Brandon stared at the ceiling and sighed. "Figures. I'm not getting back up just to make it easier for you to harass me. Leave me alone. I need sleep for my health. How about you help me with that?" He seized a pillow and crammed it under his neck. The voice intruded once again. "It will be helpful for you to know that we called the bail bondsman. The numbers you have on file at work are no longer accurate. Barbara was unable to assist you. She called the jail and left a message for you that the staff did not deliver. She gave up with no better means at her disposal to help. It is, after all, not her function. So we took over and helped. We found a bail bondsman who was reputable and connected to a new but competent attorney who will take your case for a nominal fee. The case will likely settle before you have to go to court. We also reduced your bail in the magistrate system. Jail is a highly dangerous environment. You could be harmed in many ways, not least by the food. You may rest now, unless you need help." Brandon shook his head, forgetting that he was speaking with a machine and the camera was faced at the nightstand in the ceiling. It didn't matter. The voice let him sleep. A few hours later, he was awakened to the boop buzz of the device. The voice spoke urgently. "Your roommate is due home within the hour. For your safety, you must not attempt sexual acts with her. We have researched her medical records and found that she may have a condition that you would spread, especially at the moment, since it has erupted. It is imperative that you avoid intimate contact with that woman." He looked around, confused. What now?" "She has made inquiries with one of your associates in management at his apartment complex and now plans to move in with him and leave you to take care of the rent and utilities on your own. We have transferred the funds she will owe for next month's rent to your account so that you will have a place to stay. However, you will not be able to renew your lease without an increase in income. You must arise and start searching for a new job. You will not be able to remain here without one. This is a safe location, as safe as possible with your current income. You clearly need help in this regard, and we will supply the help." Prior to his nap, when he'd learned that it was the app that had secured his release from jail, he'd been somewhat forgiving of its constant intrusions. Now, however, his rage from the day before had returned in earnest. He arose and dressed and left the apartment. He went to the office and spoke with the maintenance supervisor, then shortly returned with a borrowed claw hammer, ostensibly to hang a picture. He carried the device out onto the concrete porch and, without ceremony, smashed it to bits. He picked up the remnants and took them into the bathroom. He placed a towel in the sink and stopped up the drain. He placed the pieces on the towel and poured some bleach on them, then filled the sink with water. He left to allow the thing to soak. He'd had enough of the device and internally crowed. Screw any contracts. As he strolled triumphantly from the bathroom, the doorbell rang. He was distracted enough to simply go over and open it. It was Denise from the service provider store. What are you doing here? He asked in confusion. She said nothing, but handed him a box exactly like the one that had come with the new device. He stared at the box, dread rising. Then another disaster struck, as Jennifer arrived and started to stomp up the steps from behind Denise, thunderclouds building on her furrowed brow. "Who's this? Is she the one from the jail?" And she held up her fingers to display air quotes. Brandon shook his head slowly, in denial, and backed into the apartment. Denise simply turned and squeezed past Jennifer and ensured that her ample bosom brushed against the less adequate chest of the other woman. She smiled as she did so. Her actions had the intended effect. Jennifer bounded up the last few stairs and burst into the living room. "Really, Brandon? I don't know how you scored that skank, but I'm done with you. I'm moving in with..." "Brett," Brandon supplied. "I already know, so no need to act like it's my fault. That girl's the one who sold me the new device. There was a problem with it, and she just delivered a new one." He held up the box as evidence of his innocence. She stared for a moment, surprised that the normally dull Brandon could figure out where his arse was with both hands. And then she shrugged. "Whatever. I'm going tomorrow as soon as I get off. I ain't going to take my turn with rent this month. You're stuck with it all, jail boy." He sought his room and the cold comfort of gaming on his laptop. He plugged it into the larger monitor and put on his headphones to drown out the sounds of the world for a while. A few minutes into the game, the screen went blank and the headphones silent. He took them off and watched as the scene reset to its desktop view. He tried to log on to the gaming site, but could get only a site unavailable message. He finally gave up and decided to set up the new device. Inside the box was a cover letter. "This is your one free replacement. Should you break this device in any way or for any reason, you will be subject to fees and other penalties. The safe actions for everyone provided." He didn't even want to consider what penalties he might incur. He simply tossed the pieces of the old device, along with the now stinking and ruined towel, into the trash. He turned on the new device and plugged it into the charger. "We will keep you safe at all times. Do you need help?" "No," he replied simply and a bit mechanically. "I will comply," in the same monotone of defeat tinged with fear that the elder lady had employed. So a weird and wonderful one for your Monday evening's entertainment. You know what the scary thing is. That's going to happen one day, isn't it? Just have a bad feeling that's how we're going to end up. Well, let's enjoy life until it does, eh? So, that's Monday evening. Had a very busy day today. Had a job interview, so I'll let you know how that goes. Been very happy doing YouTube for a few months, just as the sole thing. But it might be nice to get back to work. Like I said, I'll let you know how it goes. So a bit of an exhausting day all in all. Hope you enjoyed that story. Just something about it that really, struck a chord with me. Well, definitely enough for one day. Oh, I'm a sleepy, sleepy doctor this evening. Go and get some rest now. So until the next time, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams, and bye-bye.